Right, welcome back, and we're on to the next section. Okay, so here we're going to install first of all the bearing retaining cups. Now, if you saw the earlier video, you saw that I installed an NJ on the generator side. So that's the bearing with the removable inner ring, but it had a lip on it. And that lip was there that I chose because it stops end float of the crank in that direction. So basically the lip was stopping the crank from pushing inwards, and the crank can't move in this direction anyway, so realistically these are no longer required, but I'll put them in anyway just out of historical interest context, but they'll go in there anyhow. But basically this crank cannot move now because of the NJ on the other side. As long as the NJ was put in correctly, we'll be okay. So the first job is to put those in, and then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole in the case. Now you'll probably go, ah, what? But I'm actually going to drill a hole in the case here, and I'm going to tap it out to M8 or M10. I haven't quite decided yet. And I'm going to put it through this lower slot here. Now this lower slot would have been for, or is for, using the wet clutch. Now if you're going to go for dry clutch, you no longer need that. But essentially oil will splash onto here through the gearbox hole, and then basically flow down this ridge here, which is an angle, onto the edge of the flywheel, and eventually work its way through from whatever direction. So that's what that was for, but obviously we don't need that anymore because we're going to put a dry clutch in here, and we'll move on to that when we get to the gearbox. So I'm just going to whip all this on now and tap and drill the hole. Right, that's that done. So next up we need to put the connecting rods in. Now we're only going to put those in loosely. Remember that they're numbered. There you go. So they have to go in with the numbers facing up. We're just going to put them in loosely for the moment. We're not going to torque them up or anything. So I'll get on and do that. Up next comes cylinder number 1, which is sometimes not marked, so it's the one without the 2 on, obviously, and it's the left hand one looking at the generator. So as you look at the engine this way, it's the left hand one, and the engine of course rotates in this direction clockwise whilst you're looking at it. Right, so we're going to get a piston, we'll put that in. So put the camshaft in as well, back in there, it's loose at the moment, and we need to put the cover on with lashings of oil, which I've already slapped on there. So we're going to get that on. A couple of split washers. Sorry, spring washers I meant. There we go, just tighten that up. You notice there's still a little bit of play on the camshaft, and there's a little bit aluminium ring that goes in there, or steel ring, just to reduce that play a bit. In next, the little aluminium spacer. And you remembered on the back of this course there was those 2 slots, so you were sensible enough just to double check before it went on to make sure there was no crud in them. Next we want the Novatex sort of fibre bonded resin gear. Now remember here we've got a timing mark on this one. My other one didn't have any marks on, funny enough. So we put the dot there. Just have a quick look around, make sure there's no other dots in case someone's been stupid. And the next thing we need to do is get 2 push rods, insert them in there, and we need to find the crossover point for the cams. Right, so I found crossover, and crossover, of course, for those that don't know, is the point where the valves, the inlet and exhaust valve cross, and when you wobble it right or left, the camshaft, you can feel it moves one valve at the same time, just about to swap over to moving the other. That's called the crossover point. If you push hard on the two push rods, you'll feel it quite nicely. It gives you a rough idea where to set it, and you'll notice that the slot angle on here should match the little timing one in a minute, which is here. So right, on that basis we'll put the Novatex on. Find the little dot, which I think somebody's put in before. Make sure there's a load of oil. By the way, the last thing to check is that if you notice there's a recess on the back of here, you have to make sure that these nut heads, bolt heads, are not proud and rub this. So it might be worth a little check just to double check that you know, that this is actually less than that there. So 4.28. .13, so we've got a couple of mil. Obviously if this wears back a couple of mil, it'll start rubbing on there. So we're all good to go. Good, now we're ready to do the timing. So I've already done a separate video on this. If you want to go and look at it with the degree wheel on here even, so just attach that on there, make yourself a little pointer, find top dead center, like I said, by rotating it one way, make a little stop end so the piston can't move, which is why we've put the left cylinder on. So you rotate it one way, then the other, and then divide the number of degrees to find top dead center very accurately, and then we know where we are. And then basically the procedure is that we reverse the engine by whatever it is you fancy. 28 PS 2 degrees, 34 PS 3 to 5 degrees. I set mine about 2.5, I think, to allow for modern petrols. And that's it for the moment on this. Right, first job is to torque up the connection rod bolts, nuts even, and you need to torque those to 42 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. So that means you put them on with no washers, set your torque wrench to 40 Newton meters, turn it, and then give it another 90 degrees on top of that just to stretch the bolt. So there's a standard stretch bolt really. Once you've got that in there, we can then put the pistons on. Now the pistons go on like this. So you've got direction of travel there, you've got the right and the left. Have you noticed it says logo? So these are notes that I made last time. So you put them on with the logo facing up on one side and down on the other basically, and you do that so that when they both come up like this, both pistons, if you were to imagine them like an inline engine, when they get to the top, all of the writing is in the same direction. When they go either side, one goes upside down and one goes the right way up. So first thing you need to do is just heat that slightly and warm the piston. Put some gloves on first, and then slide them on. So direction of travel is that way, so this is the left hand side, so this is the piston is up, the text is upside down, so it goes on that way. Just make sure it slides back from side to side a little bit, otherwise you might struggle to get the barrel on properly. So that's that one. Let me do the same to the other side. Right, so they're both on. So last time I put one of these in the motorbike, it was quite a heavy engine, so I left the cylinders off. Sorry, the cylinder barrels off, and it was a bit easier. But then when I went to put the rings on, it was a bit fiddly, particularly the oil scraper, which is number 3 ring, the 3-part one. That's fiddly to get on. So this time I've decided I'm going to just get someone to help me lift it in rather than assemble it in the bike itself. I'm still going to leave the flywheel out for the moment. So let's get these rings on. Got to be really careful with these because they're a bit of a bugger, and of course always they're fragile. Now that's interesting. I've just opened this and had a look at it, and it's not a 3-part ring, or it doesn't appear to be. It's just different design this time. So the last one had an outer, a spring and an inner, and it was really damn fiddly to get in there. I spent about 2 hours trying to get them both on there, but this time it's actually not. It's like a spring that slides around inside. It's difficult to get it to focus because the camera wants to look at everything but that. So in that case, it's a bit easier to put on. So in that case, I'm actually just going to slip the barrels back on and fiddle around with those for a minute before we move on to doing the generator. So all of these cylinders, or both of them, had 3 pieces missing, which were chunked off, which you can see the repairs on here. You won't notice them when they go on. They look fine from the sides. And see my other video for that, which you may have noticed to pop up if it hasn't loaded already. So let's just slide those in for there at the moment without any rings on. We'll come back on and put the rings on afterwards. And remember with these, there's 1 nut or 2. Some of the nuts you've got to put on first. You need to put at least 2 on if you're going to rotate the engine, because the cylinder will move around otherwise. There we go, just slide that one on. Plop that in there. Try and find another nut. So it's not even the right size, get a bit of a mess here. Let's have a look here for a moment. I've got new nuts for this one. I like the blackened ones. Yeah, like this. Prefer those ones, they just don't have to paint them then, do you? So this is my Zundap Diagnostics that we're going to install, or we have installed, and I'll quickly show you how it works in case you're wondering. So if you're not interested in computers, you might find this a bit dull, or you might find it quite interesting, I don't know. Anyway, down here we've got an OLED, which is a display from a 1990s Nokia mobile phone, that kind of thing. It's a 128 by 64 pixel display, high definition. Over there we've got an AT Mega 328 processor, connected, basically a nano, connected to a hall sensor, which you can just see down in there. A load of C++ code up here, and if you squint carefully there, those people who are interested in it, that's binary, and you can count there the, in case you're ever wondering how this sort of thing in computer works, you're looking at 8 bits there, see it? Count them, B for binary, and then 8 bits, which makes 1 byte. And if you actually squint at that, you'll see that it's actually the shape of a piston, roughly, see it? More if you look at the ones. And that then equates to that piston down there. And you can see how this works. If I bring in a neodymium magnet, you'll see that it can calculate the position of the piston according to the flywheel as the thing rotates. So that'll give me that, and obviously that'll give me things like RPM for when I'm trying to set it up, top dead center. Just listen to the audio tone and top dead center will appear. We'll have RPM, of course. We can either be a bit clever, and if we calculate the rate of change of pitch, we can actually calculate acceleration of the flywheel and all kinds of other fancy things, but at this stage we don't need to do that, but it's quite useful to have. Right, back to the engine. I'm just going to slide the flywheel in temporarily as well. Right, let's test our little diagnostics box that we made, just to see how we go. We look at the real piston over there on the left. As it comes up to top dead center, you can look at the display as well. You see the piston moving around in its range. It just needs calibrating, which we'll do later. What you've got to do is listen to the tone. Right, let's move on then. So next up, we need to go back to the generator side. The flywheel is just in temporarily, as I said. We'll worry about it later. I'm going to take that back out before we lug it into a bike at some point. The cylinder's just on temporarily. Likewise, I'll decide whether I'm going to put the rings on before it goes in the bike or after. So next thing we need to do is sort out the generator side of it and the timing. which I'm going to have to go and find in my stash of stuff.